So I want to talk about Halo Infinite today, which is kind of unusual for me, considering I sometimes forget that game even exists. But yeah, I want to talk about it, specifically about maps in Halo Infinite. As many of you know, Halo Infinite only launched with 10 maps, which is the least amount of maps a mainline Halo game has ever launched with. Now, ever since Forge was added to Halo Infinite, people have been creating maps, and some of those maps have made their way into Halo Infinite's matchmaking. And I think that's cool, despite the state of the game and the problems that still exist. I think Forge maps in Halo matchmaking is a good thing. But I think it's important to recognize that there is a difference between a Forge map and a developer-made map. Now, I see some people talk about the maps that have been added to Halo Infinite, and they don't clarify that distinction between developer-made maps, Forge maps. They just consider all the maps that have been added to the game or added to matchmaking as new maps for Halo Infinite. And I mean, they're not wrong. A Forge map is still a map, and if 343 adds a Forge map to Halo Infinite's matchmaking, then they added a new map to matchmaking. But again, there is a big difference between a Forge map and a developer-made map. Despite how good Halo Infinite's Forge is, there are limits. There's only so much a forger can do when creating a map in Halo Infinite. The tools that 343 have are more advanced. They have the potential to create a map that is far better than anything somebody can create in Forge. And I don't like this idea that Forge maps are good enough, or that a new Forge map is the same thing as a new developer-made map, which just isn't the case at all because of what I explained. The developers have more tools, and there's more possibilities when it comes to creating a developer-made map as opposed to a Forge map. Some people like to talk about all the new maps Halo Infinite has gotten since launch, or at least the maps that have been added to matchmaking, that is. But a lot of those maps are Forge maps. The Community Collection playlist in Halo Infinite was a playlist of Forge maps. We also now have a Squad Battle playlist that features currently 5 Forge maps. And, you know, some of these Forge maps are really cool, don't get me wrong. I've seen a lot of really cool Forge maps in Halo Infinite. And again, like I mentioned, Forge maps being added to matchmaking is not a bad thing, especially Halo Infinite Forge maps, because Halo Infinite's Forge is so advanced. But regardless of how many Forge maps 343 adds to Halo Infinite's matchmaking, that's not an excuse for the lack of dev-made maps they have added to the game. Currently, Halo Infinite has been out for about 21 months now, and the game has only received 7 developer-made maps after about 21 months. So the game launched with the least amount of maps out of any mainline Halo game, and it's also done a poor job of making up for that post-launch. And if I'm being honest, I don't think 343 is scrambling and trying to create as many maps as they can as fast as they can. I don't think that's the case. I don't really think they're trying to make up for the lack of dev-made maps in the game at launch. I think they're somewhat content with the rate at which they're adding dev-made maps, and I also think they feel Forge maps, to an extent, are good enough as a alternative to developer-made maps. And I mean, it's a decent alternative, right? Like, if we can't have dev-made maps, Forge-made maps isn't the end of the world, but it's not a good replacement for developer-made maps. So like I mentioned, 343 have done a poor job of adding new maps to the game since launch. And I say that because compared to previous Halo games and, you know, older Call of Duty games. The rate at which 343 is adding new maps to Halo Infinite isn't the greatest. With Halo 2, 10 months after launch, that game had received 9 maps, and it got those 9 maps in about a 2-month window. Halo 3 had received 6 new maps after about 7 months post-launch. Halo 3 had a total of 13 DLC maps. Halo Reach received 13 maps after about 14 months post-launch. Halo Infinite's about 21 months old, and it's gotten 7 new developer-made maps since launch. And this is the live service Halo game. So yeah, the rate at which they're adding new maps is pathetic. So keep in mind, this isn't just an issue of, you know, Halo Infinite launched in a underwhelming state, and because of that, 343, they'll never be able to catch up. They'll never be able to make up for the lack of maps that were there at launch. So it's not just a matter of that. Regardless of how many maps were in Halo Infinite at launch, the rate at which they're adding new ones is still bad compared to older Halo games. And older Halo games were not live service Halo games, so that makes it even more pathetic. And like I mentioned, I don't really think 343 is concerned with adding new maps to Infinite at the same rate as older Halo games receive new maps. I feel like they're probably somewhat content or completely content with the rate at which the game's receiving new maps now. And again, I think they rely on Forge maps maybe a little more than they should. And the people who act like Forge maps are good enough or just as good as developer-made maps, and they express that sentiment publicly, you know, in a way they kind of enable 343 to lean heavily into Forge maps as an alternative to dev-made maps. You know, what I'm discussing in this video, this is part of a bigger topic, that topic being paid DLC or map packs versus live service games. And I did a whole video discussing that topic. And I do personally prefer the days of paid DLC and especially map packs. One of the reasons is because when a developer is relying on map packs to earn revenue from the game post-launch, there's more of an incentive for them to make those maps good. Now, when you're relying on weapon skins, player skins, emblems, weapon charms, all this cosmetic crap, when that's how they earn revenue from the game post-launch, then there's less of an incentive to not only add new maps, but also less of an incentive to make those maps good. There are a lot of things about modern Halo and modern gaming that I dislike. And I think many others dislike a lot of these things as well. And, you know, something I've seen time and time again from people who defend the current state of modern gaming, who defend garbage video games and garbage practices from various companies, is they'll say, if you don't like it, then don't play it. They act like if someone's playing a game that you don't like, then that doesn't have any effect on you. The people that like the game can play the game, the people that don't like the game can stay away from the game, and those decisions don't have an effect on the other person. But that's really not true. It's not. And that's become even more clear in recent years. When people support garbage, you are more likely to receive garbage. So yes, that decision that these people are making to support garbage practices and support microtransactions and support horrible, broken, unfinished games, yeah, that kind of does have an effect on somebody who wants good, finished games without microtransactions, right? because there's people supporting garbage. So developers are more likely to give you garbage. Why? A lot of people don't like microtransactions, but if developers are making a ton of money from microtransactions because of people supporting and buying the microtransactions, they're more likely to keep putting microtransactions in games. If people support garbage games that lack content, then there's less of an incentive for developers to finish the game before release, especially when they can finish it later and people still support the game and spend a ton of money on it post-launch. Now, I'm not like pointing the finger at everyone who's played a shitty game or bought a microtransaction or anything like that. I understand that some people aren't trying to change things. They kind of just accept the way modern gaming is, and hey, maybe there's a game that was unfinished and it's pretty bad, but they still get some enjoyment out of it, so they just play it, right? Like, they're not trying to change the state of modern gaming. They're just going to enjoy what they want to enjoy. If they see a cool item in the in-game store, they might spend money on it, and it's kind of just like whatever to them, right? Like, yeah, they might agree the game's bad. Yeah, they might not like microtransactions, but they're not trying to change things. They might not like where things are at with modern games, but they rather get as much enjoyment out of these modern games as they can, as opposed to staying away, boycotting, and trying to change things. And I do get that. Like, I get that. I tend to stay away from microtransactions and garbage games, personally. I don't like supporting that shit. But I understand people that do support it because they still find parts of it fun or whatever. The real clowns here are people who actually like microtransactions and they think that they make games better. They want microtransactions in games. Or people that don't recognize that a garbage game is a garbage game and they defend it, and they defend unfinished releases and defend developers finishing it later and stuff like that. Those are the real clowns. And there's a lot of those people. There are a lot of those people. So I want to make it clear that there is a difference between people who actually like a lot of the garbage that is modern gaming. There's a difference between them and people who recognize how shitty modern gaming is, but they still play some shitty games, still spend some money on microtransactions because, again, they get some enjoyment out of it, but they do recognize the shitty state of modern gaming. So yeah, that's going to do it for this one. I just wanted to talk about that. Yeah, Halo Infinite may be getting some Forge maps added to matchmaking. That's cool. Forge maps are cool, but they're not a good replacement for developer-made maps. Absolutely not. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.